The 26th of August 2022 is going to be the 40th anniversary of Gilsoft placing its first advert in Popular Computing Weekly, and I couldn't let that pass without a chance to take a look at some of the things that brought it to life and the programs we put out in that first advert. 3D Maze of Gold, CESIL, Life, Bear Island and Munchman, of course, and the story of that one getting cancelled. But I found some original folders as well as a cassette, so plenty to look through. So join me on a bit of a trip down memory lane from 40 years ago. I've used this joke before in other videos. This is a bit of a prequel. I've covered a few videos, so I'll signpost those. Dad had a big influence on my life, obviously, in our early years in terms of some of the things that I did. I mean, this is one I found in 1978. It's the 6th issue of a magazine I was publishing. I doubled the price, so obviously I was making a distribution to try and make some money. Obviously there were electronics mags all over the house, and I learned electronics through him and experimentation. And I've covered this, including in the attic videos, raid in the attic for magazines like this one from the 1970s and Maplin. And my finding my original electronics kit, put some parts, restoring one, experiments if you're interested. I enjoyed making those. And of course, in the tribute to Clive, I covered my dad's Sinclair Cambridge Programmable, which is where I pretty much first learned to do stored programming. We also spend a lot of time building these Chroma Chime kits. I'll do another video on those, actually, on how they work. The TMS 1000 video covers that a little bit as well. That's even if it's of interest to you. And of course, the electronics magazines were filled with these sort of adverts, like the Scrumpy, which there's quite a few videos on me reconstructing this very early kit computer. Something I coveted back in the day, although I really fancied the Triton when it came out in November 1978. That would have been my ideal machine to have had, I suppose. But you know, especially by 1980, when I saw the Computing Today with the 3D maze game in it, how it's done with the Triton, the layout, and actually does display 3D mazes. So again, keep an eye open on my Triton videos about the finally built and own a Triton, and of course I will want to run the maze game, especially now it's been recovered. Now, in terms of computing, obviously there's quite a bit about the ZX81 there's quite a bit I go over in the video on the 40th birthday for the ZX81. I also talk about how important this article was on controlling the substation and I/O, and the project I built with Meccano and the Maplin keyboard. And this is really where I learned assembly language programming, using Rodney Zax's great book. And very importantly as well, obviously, would have been the Bug Byte disassembler and debugger program I had, and just the back of the manual with its code against the hex and the assembler. And I think that's, you know, it's just easy to see the decimal hex and the Z80 in there, and it's quite important really that this is what set up my knowledge of programming, really ready for us to be able to work the system, and that really led to this sort of situation. Now by the end of November, it's a letter from Your Computer saying thank you for the you may recognise the address, don't live there anymore, so please don't go calling round, this is someone else's house, but it was the address published for Gilsoft. And they accepted in November 81 for publication in Your Computer. I had another acceptance earlier than that in August for Practical Computing. I've got a good hunt through Practical Computing, can't find a published piece, but I assume it's there. And then there's another one in June of 82. But that one from November did actually get used, and it appeared in February 1982. I was paid the princely sum of £6, and this is the program, the 24-line screen. So as an average ZX81 user, allowing you to use the print-out statement to get to the bottom of the screen. So that, you know, there was quite a bit that led up to the establishment of Gilsoft. If you've seen some of my tweets, I went through my 1982 diary, looking at some of the entries, So this is one key program for Hangman, but here's sort of the seed of the idea. In January 30th of January 82, Dad and I have been discussing the practical side of software publishing. And then we also have another one, not a dot happened, but I've obviously got, here is my first contact with the game Adventure, with some abstract backing up of software by the looks of it, and using the system for practical winemaking labelling with my dad. So these sort of programs and development, you know, they were all driven as well by my attendance at the after school club, which I'd been going to for quite some time before I got the ZX81. So in my previous diary and my 1981 diary, you know, it really came. I went to Arnold's Computer Studies, which turned out to be quite interesting. What a statement. So that's, you know, that's how we got there, and they're covered in those videos if you want to pick up on that side of it. So all the elements were in place for the establishment of Gilsoft, and I initially thought it was a ZX Microfair I'd gone to see the ZX Spectrum, but I think probably looking at it was perhaps the exhibition at Earl's Court. I was a reader of practical computing, so I'd have known about the upcoming one, and obviously that was the one where the Sinclair Spectrum was launched on the 23rd of April in Earl's Court. And it was probably there that the phone call back to my dad happened to say, you need to get one of these ordered. I think we're going to have you know, this is going to be the one we can actually sell software on. It was a long delay between the payment and the delivery in July. I mean, Sinclair suffered a bug, didn't they, with their own, which needed the ULA to have a chip soldered into the correct some of the I/O port timing, I think it was. So it was by the August the programs were written, I think, and ZX81 CESIL had been adapted to the Spectrum. I'd been developing the ideas on paper for the games already, so that one actually now appears in Popular Computing Weekly, 26th of August 1982, which is why I've decided to make this video, obviously. I do find it quite amusing that the practical computing, which became so important later from August 2 years before, contains a picture of a Pegasus type horse as well. That's the one that Adventure 2, the basis for Quill, is in. So quite portentous maybe of the existence of that. And so the advert is here on page 7 in the classifieds, and we've got this one here, the at last superb Spectrum software, my dad's words, I think. I don't actually have a copy of that magazine, so it's but they're the first four, aren't they? They're 3D Maze of Gold, Life, Munchman and Bear Island of the games, and obviously, as I say, the adapted ZX CESIL. So I think maybe we'll take a little look at the first of those two, Life and Maze of Gold, as a sort of first step, and move onwards then to the next advert, which we appeared in, which would have been the Your Computer of October 82, which I have covered in the 40 years celebration of computing. I think yeah, I know that one. It's this one, isn't it? Yeah, which has got this very similar lineup of adverts. These are the only two adverts that Munchman appears in, because obviously it got dropped due to a letter from Atari. We'll talk about that a little bit more later, maybe. And obviously now I've got Mongoose added to the lineup, and Dad's Amplifier. So okay, let's take a little look at Life first, and then Maze of Gold, and we'll have a little through the folder that I've got for Maze of Gold. All of these games came with an inlay card sold by mail order. These were the first 500 we had printed, which had the word copyright misspelt, unfortunately. So we had to get it reprinted. This is one from ZX CESIL, and titles typed on an old Olympia typewriter. This one was obviously saved because they had the star in the wrong place, so I think we used all 500 of the cards though, and ended up reusing the ones with the faulty ones anyway. We had to reprint them again, I think, because we couldn't say Gilsoft ZX Spectrum software, so we had to reprint them. We did eventually use them all, I think, so it doesn't really matter. So these were the earliest of the cards, and life would have been like that. These cards were printed by an old traditional printer in High Street in Barry, and he actually had metal set type, literally lead type laid in, and which gives it's got a lovely sort of plasticky cover on the. It's not clear here, but it's quite a lovely deep blue, and a very deep black print, literally from the original lead type machine. It smelled of ink and lead type. We used that printer for quite some time for these cards until we moved on. Then we cover that later. So our great memories of going to see that being done and big mechanical machine printing. So this is a tape. We would have produced some labels for it. We'll have to recover this tape. I think it's actually got the program to print on the ZX printer. The top and bottom labels. We eventually switched to photocopied ones that were cut and stuck onto the cassette. Very early amateur production. So let's take a look at the actual program itself. I have loaded a copy of Life into the system and stopped it running automatically, so we can have a quick look at the code if I need to. So if we load the snapshot, okay, so it's using some very basic protection to stop you being able to see the listing with some colours inserted. And it actually is started with a go to 800. That doesn't stop you listing. For example, if I list 800, it would have been saved with an auto run at line 800. So it sets up the UDGs. So it just basically goes through and copies in all the UDG graphics. So, and we get the tune. Okay. So some simple instructions. Obviously, for those who don't know it, this is the well-known Conway simulation of cellular structures from mathematical life. So you can set up moving around, modifying the cells. We can change it. Okay, so 0 to 9, 0 and 9 set the robot, cursor keys, and G to generate. Okay. So if we basically set up a pattern of some kind, we can go no idea what pattern's going to produce anything useful. And if I go G for generate, you should be able to see a wave of light running over the cells. And that cell, the trick that's used here is to use the life cycle. Is the bright bit is used to determine whether its next generation it lives or dies. So it actually doesn't need to store anything except any attributes. And it's just basically we've got a spinner generated now, so it's just going to crawl across the screen. But it should eventually crash into the other one again, I would have thought, because it will wrap round. So it might take a while, but eventually this spinner will zoom through. So just out of interest, I might leave this one running along and see what happens after it goes through a few generations. It should cycle around and crash into the static bit. I'll probably zoom up the actual video. In fact, we wonder if we could use the next to accelerate it. If I can I set it up to 7 megahertz? Yeah, so it's quicker. And I can probably go a bit faster again as well. Let's set it up to 14 megahertz. There we go, stagnation 155. And if we go, I'd have given a lot to play with this years ago. And if we can go higher again. So can I go up to 28 megahertz? Wow, amazing. The next is a great machine to play with your old software and toys on. So that's actually stagnant if we look carefully. If I go back to 3.5 megahertz, it's not really stagnant, but it can't detect it because it doesn't detect there's two patterns the same. So it's just counting up for nothing now. There we go. So that's life. I won't go into the detailed code. It has got some assembly language in it. I don't seem to have any source code for the assembly language for life, so I'm assuming that it was hand assembled and poked into memory, because those statements seem to have a little bit of the assembly language for it. If we list back out to 800, it's not just setting up the UDGs, it's also setting up the assembly language in here, which is all just numbers. So I'm assuming I should be able to disassemble this code easily and find out what it does. You know, I wonder what that pattern is. Seems to be some sort of number at the end of it, like a pattern. So it'd be an interesting, maybe I'll do another episode taking life apart and disassembling the code that runs. I do remember the attribute trick. So that might make an interesting one. Here's the main loop of the code. Is basically, if you at the very top, if you press the G key, because it's a combination of basic and assembler, if you press the G key, it'll go to 500, and here you have the main loop of the program that basically runs around calling user 32445, getting a return value of Z, and it'll keep going round and round in a loop doing the beep for the life. So it does one sweep and goes back to basic to do the main loop, so I can do key presses and things like that. So it's a sort of touching the toes into the assembly language to generate it, and that was one of the ones I sort of planned out how to do it. I haven't read everything I could about the Spectrum. I worked out that I could use the bright bit for storing my life cycle. So I think we will do a bit of a custom breakdown of the software and have a little look at how that assembler works in another video. Maybe we'll have a bit of a deep dive in some of these programs. Now we can have a little dive into 3D Maze of Gold. I was pretty much amazed to see this. I think it was sometime last year. I spotted a copy of the it's got the second version of the card on it. ZX Spectrum still says ZX Computer Software. Went for a fairly significant sum, really, considering its original $5.95 type price on the corner. And obviously it is, you can tell it's genuine. And I'd forgotten we included these, it's like a wet paper copy. You can see the photocopied strip that looks very much like the Life label printed on there. And this was the material we had. It's like it was a cheap photocopy we'd picked up by now, and this we did a little folding instruction sheet that went with it, so it gives you a little bit of instructions and things. So I have to have a little dig through this. I'm sure we've got a copy here somewhere, and the obviously address and the phone number, and there's a better view of the actual stuck-on label, which was originally printed on the ZX printer and then photocopied on our wet photocopier. So let's flick over to the next and take a look at 3D Maze of Gold. Load it from a tap, and we'll put it into 48K mode. Like reusing things, so again, simple instructions. Okay, so it's 5, 8 and 7, same thing. I think you get allowed to have a map above level 5, so very good or something like that. So we go for 6 average. And now it picks a random maze, and then we should be able to walk around the maze. There we go. So 7 takes me forward. But now I've picked up 2 gold bars. What you'll notice is the value just continues to drop. So you've actually entered, that's the way the time limit is given. Can I get a map? No. Oh, there we go. So that is our map. Either key 2 or 1. Just slowly reveals a version of the map with the, and you've got the time and to study it. You should see U as well, I think, in the exit, but obviously not the walls. There we go. There's the exit, and you are now here. So this is the, yeah, the blue E is U, I think. So a fair distance from the exit, but I didn't know which way I was facing. You can see it's fairly fast redraw. I'm trying to find a corridor with quite a bit of depth on there. It doesn't draw, the draw distance is quite limited. But it's pretty quick. And this is only a standard 3.5 megahertz runtime on it. I don't know whether changing that would make much of a difference if I go through. Oh yeah. Again, oops, almost too quick. You probably want to set it to 14. Actually makes it much more playable again. I am completely lost now though. And it draws the map quicker, obviously. Oh, I'm even further away. I'm facing south. Ah, that's what the S, north, east, southwest. I'd forgotten it did that. There we go. Right, well, obviously I can't actually break into the game because if I hit break, it just crashes. A bit more advanced protection system for losing access. So we'll have a little delve into the code just briefly, I think. So I've broken into the basic beforehand, so they should be able to load this in just standard next mode so we can get the advantage of the big editor to look through it, and it makes the code a little bit easier to read with the colour coding on the new version. So it's obviously all written in basic, and is essentially it is assembly language, but again it uses the same sort of idea as the loop to call into assembly language to draw the distances and things. You can do a number of actions, so it's more about working out where you are, how you're moving around. Here's the exit, what level you were playing on. It's quite a small bit of code. You can obviously run out of goal completely if it gets to 0. There's no point in escaping, and that's how you lose. So that puts the time up against it, and then you've got the a couple of strings that generate maze groups. I can't remember how I did that, but it just basically juggles up the maze a little bit, but it's always solvable. I didn't know anything about maze algorithms, but here's the bit that pokes in some UGGs, I believe, because it actually does load a bit of code. And obviously some music, for the data for the music, I think, and the instructions. By now I'd actually got a copy of the Picturesque assembler and editor, which is called EDITAS, to start code. As I said, the one chances are I used the ZX81 assembler to generate the codes for life. And then just type them in as numbers into the basic for the spectrum. I was going to say the next then. So if we take a look at the so let's give you the full experience of developing, shall we? So this is loading the TZX from the Raspberry Pi, but it'd be exactly the same as loading it from tape. So every time I wanted to work on the code, I'd have had to have done this. You couldn't have a Spectrum 40-year-old one, could you? Well, you didn't have this experience. I won't finish it all the way though, because what I did then, in order to get this recovered, I actually had these tapes which have got the code on for Maze of Gold, and I recovered the assembly on the very end. There's one that says Maze Code T. I got quite a few Maze of Gold tapes actually. I was obviously very careful with backups. So there's, I don't know how many we've got here, but it's about 7 of them. So they contain multiple copies, and they're also the ones for making copies onto tape so that they could be mastered and produced quickly. The technology we used was actually, I'll find it hopefully, there we are, now we've got it, new text or continue. So if I do new text, now we can just do a load, quote, quote, and we can load the source code from a cassette. In this case, I'm just going to attach a tap file, which hopefully I've got. So if I got recovery.tap, hopefully. Okay, and I should now be able to go back to the thing, and that will load goldcode.t, which I would have loaded from the cassette, but obviously I've saved it back out again. So now we can, I want to list it. So list, and here's the original source code in EDITAS for 3D Maze of Gold, recovered from one of my tapes and saved into the machine. So some level stuff, left-hand view. Now the way the system works, let me see if I can find you a picture of it somehow. How can we do that? If you imagine the screen is actually fully drawn, or with all of the just 2 diagonals and all the way to the distance, and then I just use the attribute to colour in blocks of attributes at each level, so increasingly smaller rectangles. I probably need to dig out somehow a copy of the actual screen that's drawn in BASIC. Maybe we can hack the BASIC a minute to have a little look at how the screen's constructed, and this will make more sense then as it draws each of the rectangles, calling the C-rect, just drawing each view that you would see as you step along at each depth of the maze from your viewpoint. And so basically here's the C-rect that just colours in an attribute area rectangle at high speed. Well, relatively high speed. The code is very raw, and there's some clear screen stuff as well for doing it. So it's a very short bit of assembly language, and then you've got the printing the overview of the maze, clearing the maze memory. So it's quite a bit more assembly language in this, but still a small amount, using BASIC as the code to hang it together, much like a modern program would do today. Anything needs to be optimized in assembler, and the infrastructure in C. So and a good way of doing it on the Next as well. You can write 99% of the code you need in BASIC. There's been some really impressive stuff being done on it. So it's similar technique. So let's have a dig and see if I can find that picture of the screen. It's much easier to visualize. So I think this is the bit of code that draws the initial screen at 7090. So it obviously makes it border 7, ink 7, paper 7, so it's all invisible. But if I make it ink something we'll be able to see, something obvious maybe, will it make it blue or black maybe? And I will stop it returning as a subroutine. Oh, we could actually just 717. I'm hoping this will run on the Next, but I should be able to go to 7090. Okay. So you can see that it's actually got a shape on the screen that is basically all the gold bars. Now I don't think the UDGs have been set up in this session, which is why it doesn't look right. So I don't know why it isn't set up, but they're basically the gold bars, the LM, OP, NN, G, they're all the gold bar pictures ready drawn. And then you've got that pattern that allows me just to colour in at any positions, because they're attribute squares exactly. You can use the trick to be able to draw either a door or a hallway. So that's the inside trick of Maze of Gold. There's probably not a lot in this one, it's a lot thinner. 3D Maze of Gold folder. But we'll take a quick look, see what we've got stuffed in here. And it looks like it might be just some notes and source code notes maybe. So yeah, this is some bits and pieces of notes from developing the original source code by the looks of it. What to do with it? Oh, some design work. I've obviously written an initial version, slow print and the plan, accurate compass, unresponsive keys, so better rewritten. Scan for Kempston. Program piracy using load code, prevents use of merge as a break-in, and allows the inclusion of a load-in picture. I don't remember seeing the load-in picture. We'd have better load the tap and have a look at that, haven't we? So load the code, anti-break, loading picture, fast display, better presentation. Obviously kept notes. We've got here a little, just a bit of silver foil. Much more detail looking at the key scan routine. Right. Something to do with the compass. I wonder if there's a later version with the compass, and I don't remember seeing a compass. Yeah, let's have a look at that one. No plan, no plan, no plan, no plan, no compass. Compass is only on odd numbered things, so in 5 we should have the this little gold and little time on 0. Okay, so that's how the levels are done. Clear the maze memory, print the overview, clear the maze. So it was all written out on paper first and before it was typed into EDITAS. I wonder how much of this was done before. So some of how the variables run. Definitely need to find that compass, don't I? Development tape contents. Change log of what I've been doing. Kempston joystick scanning. Random maze data. So obviously there's, it looks like there may only be a handful of maze possibilities that are. Oh, that's a bit of a cheat, isn't it? Yeah, so they have the same basic maze but with different options. Interesting. Data is stored as left wall, right corridor. So, single table. Using IX to index off for the data. There you go. So, that's Maze of Gold, eh? Back in the folder so we don't lose it. Fascinating stuff. So I got curious about 3D Maze of Gold 2, and I've got a CESIL I've got here, not the one I got from the tap. And because the tap, if we let Fuse open with it in, is a load quote, I think. So that's the original copy with like the sort of thing. That's the one I recovered. But the if we load the TZX, this one actually uses a load code, and indeed you do. You get a display. So there must have been 2 versions of 3D Maze of Gold as well. And it's a lot nicer with the black and white, and with the black and gold. A little bit more. So 1 to 4, won't push key 1 on levels 4 to 9. So and I noticed in the notes that we just looked at that you get a compass on certain layouts, which is not clear when it is. But if we go to 5, we were at 6 before. Then when the level's set up for level 5, and we go in, here we are, we've got a compass now as well. So So that's actually the what was probably a later released version, because the value of the gold's in a different place as well, and you got the compass. So there you go. Yet something else I learned. We did eventually get some reviews of our programs, but they were a lot later actually. I mean, this one here is Escape from the Maze of Golden Bars. This is from What Micro, February 1984. So they seem to like it. It's 91-second loading time. It's an interesting way of looking at it. So his program is highly recommended, which is nice, wasn't it? But that was February 84. That's 2 years after we put it out, really, isn't it? And here's another one. I'm not sure when Crash reviewed this. For the contemplative, an excellent game, loads of playability, cursor keys, joystick. I think it did support Kempston as well. So that's the Maze of Gold. CESIL had one in July 1983. It was in Popular Computing Weekly. So it's the Computer Education in Schools Instruction Language. Full mechanic, consecutive fittings, doesn't really say anything, so it's just a new releases note about it. It's about all I could find magazine-wise, I think. So if anyone knows of any others, I'd be fascinated to see them. So CESIL was originally written for the 16K ZX81 after I'd originally written it for the TRS-80 owned by Mr. Danks, the TRS-80 Level 1. I think I've covered that elsewhere. And that was my sort of first commission, unpaid, to write it to make it easier for people to program CESIL programs, as that was the ICL, we believe, language that was used. So this folder's got some notes, hopefully. Just have a look, see what's in there, put it all out. It's the manual for ZX CESIL. I don't know whether this is the ZX81 or... Yeah, it looks like it's ZX CESIL. And then notes for ZX81 users, so it will be in the same manual for Spectrum and for ZX81. And this is one of those photocopies, the wet sort of effect one, coding sheet. So it's a square written out, and a blank for master, drawn up by hand with a rotary pen probably, and another couple of blanks readily written. A CESIL test program, I assume that tests all the functions. So it's the test case for testing it, and then the design instruction for it. So syntax, ideas, all written in ink pen. Input lines. What else we got? Instead of listing, probably done much later. Probably ready, once I already had that. It's done on the Secocia GP100, and this is the Dragon version of CESIL. That was the only product we eventually got out for the Dragon before we stopped supporting it. And then I've got quite a bit in here in this one, which is the instructions and handwritten notes. The reason I want to pull this out is because of this amount of development that was done on paper with a typewriter, because I didn't have a printer. So I was obviously designing a assembly language version of it by the looks of it, which I don't think we'll have to break into and have a little look. I didn't think the assembly language was used, but maybe it is. Obviously the hidden instructions, how to do powers. So is that a program? There we are. It's worth trying. Calculate powers of various numbers, how the thing is stored. So system variables. So lots of handwritten notes to develop software. I'm very interested in the fact that I've got the so lots of assembly language in here. So I'm going to have a little dig. I mean, we'll do one of those deep dive programs into CESIL itself. It probably deserves it a little bit of what we can find out about the language. Yeah, flow charts on how it works. Proper design and engineering document. You can, of course, load ZX81P files on the Next from the browser. I've recovered this from a tape a while ago. I don't think it says it's CESIL working, but it does still have a bug, so I need to find out what's actually wrong with that. But if I load that by pressing return on the Next, it goes in, and this is the bug. I'm not sure what's causing it, but I will get it working, and I think it is going to be worth doing a deep dive into this program, because if I break out of it and we go to line 0, we see I'm using the same thing about hiding the rest of the listing, and if I do a list of 3 onwards, that's where it saves it, and there's some randomized users, and I think that's because if I list 1, there is some assembly language in the REM statement, so I don't know what that does, but there's definitely assembly language in the ZX81 version of CESIL. So we'll do an episode looking at the Dragon, the ZX81 and the Spectrum one. I think that could be a bit of fun. So I'm going to load the ZX Spectrum version of CESIL so we can actually see it running without errors. I'll fast forward through the load just this time, because I think we've seen enough loading, so we've seen enough loading screens. Okay, so I've moved to the second column now to enter an instruction in. So if I put a valid CESIL instruction in, and I've got no operand for that, and that's added to the program count, and then I'm going to make it print, and we will make the text the number, is, and then we're going to do an out to output the current value, and then we're going to do a halt like that, and we should then be able to run this program, hopefully. You got to have a star in front of the run. Out of data error. Because we didn't have a value to do on the in, is it? So we need to put a star data command. How much data? 1 thing. Value is going to be 42. And now I should be able to list the program just to check it's still there, which I can. And now I can run it again. And there we are. The number is 42. So that's all it is a very simple computer programming language to teach children to write computer programs. So that's CESIL, the story of the Munchman, which featured in the original advert and obviously in the one in your computer. This was basically a clone of Pac-Man. Lost to time, we thought, but I did find a cassette, and Steve Brown, I sent it to him because I couldn't get it to load, but he managed to get it to load, and he managed to recover Munchman so that we can play it again now. And you can see here the photograph of an early cover design they did for it, maybe what I would like the 3D Major Gold cover to look like. So it is actually playable. So we'll take a quick look at it and see what it is, and then something else that was found on this cassette, which is it's got a list of just games. Some are commercial and some are mine, so it's a bit of a mixtape. I don't know why I've got so many different things on it. That's probably the one I used to carry around when I was going anywhere, but on a classic W.H. Smith's cassette tape, and it's also got a printout of it of an inventory of all sorts of other stuff to explore, so that might make an interesting video itself, just going through it all. And in fact I did go through a few of them because I spotted the one call, which we'll see in a minute on there. So let's take a look at Munchman, and then we'll go back to what I found on this tape. So here's Munchman. Don't expect too much. Mine just is a very early attempt by me writing an arcade game. So, but nice to see after all this time, and I'm glad I did keep a copy in the attic, and that the team was able to recover it. I'd actually broken into it, I think, so So yeah, I think he's, by then I had a standard of going to 9,000. So if I go to 9,000, reuse of a bit of code. So there we go. Ooh, oh crumbs. Well, I'm rubbish, and I was only even one ghost. Oh, maybe we'll give one more go. There we go. Oh, I got it. Oh, that doesn't actually allow you to capture it. But there we go, that's Munchman. Anyway, the reason I mention that tape is even though we'd had the letter from, as a result of those two adverts, I think, from Atari, I also, while we were having a little fiddle through games and programs, if I go to in here, I found this. Frogger game. Interesting. So again, I seem to have had this as a standard, so setting up UTGs for Frogger. T. Gilbert's, December 1982. I'd forgotten I'd even written this. I was obviously planning on doing a number of different arcade conversions. Again, 5, 6, 7, 8. Don't know why setting up frame 15. Maybe it was a debug version of the game. But who knows? I was fascinated to find this on the tape. So I wonder what else is on there. It seems to take a while setting it up. I don't know why. But there we go. So oops. Now I've got a problem. Oh, have I got a barrel coming? Yeah. Oh, I missed. Yeah, not very responsive, and I assume written in BASIC. Pretty much. I don't see any assembly language in there. I had a quick look through it. I couldn't see anything. So, what a fascinating find, eh? Oh. Now, the original advert included Bear Island, which we'll take a look at in a minute, and we added then in this advert, which appeared in your computer, the Mongoose game, and of course the Amplifier. Now, the Amplifier was designed by Dad, so it's a standard project case with a jack for your ear connection. I've got a lot of these parts, the knobs and the cases and some of the speakers and the cables. Can't use it on the Next, unfortunately, because obviously it's not, it relies on the outer being positive on the original Spectrum, which is what drives this. I don't really want to make one that I could confuse myself and end up damaging one of the machines on Amplifier. Came with an instruction diagram as well, and it does produce quite a loud volume for using on an original Spectrum, which was quite a nice little addition. Now, the Bear Island and Mongoose were just initial games. They did eventually become known as Games Tape 1, I believe. So we'll play out, I think this particular chapter is already getting quite long, on a little look at Bear Island and Mongoose as a pair of games, and on the Next, obviously. And hopefully we'll see you in part 2 of this, where I'll take a look at the next step in our evolution of Gilsoft and the eventual launch of the Quill. Quick look at Bear Island then. Again in 48K mode. The tune's getting familiar by now, I think, isn't it? Usual format of the game. High-score table. Transglobe flight, someone in the Arctic. You must try to fend for yourself until the rescue helicopter arrives. Polar bears congested with a human steak. So, basically it's this chase thing. Oh! I drowned, but I am in position 1 on the high score table. So again, the idea is you stand the other side of. Oh, and a bear got me. The idea is, if I can do it, is if I can get one of them to. Right, one of the bears is stuck in the ice hole now. The idea is that you basically get the bears to fall in holes. But when they gang up on you, it's a bit difficult. There we are, another one gone into a hole. They basically get the ones that are still chasing you. You find somewhere where there's several holes. Ah, blast, the last one got me. Oh, I got to get the little helicopter, haven't I? I don't seem to have any levels of complexity on the hair. I can't make it there. No, I'm going to have to find somewhere else to go. Oh, I think I got a bit of a twizzly thing. Am I actually on high speed? No, it's only 3 meg. Oh well, it's just running quite quickly. Anyway, if you get to the end, there's a little helicopter comes and picks you up. If I can be, I will play it for a little while and try and get a helicopter and stitch in the helicopter rescue. Nah, so I still don't get the helicopter. Oh, it does go back to the attract screen with your high score table if you do nothing or don't ask to play a game again. So I think it's all in basic. I don't think there's anything in assembler at all in it. So and you've got to put it in context. It's a game from, you know, very early 1982 of the Spectrum. So the last one for this session is Mongoose. It should load. I don't know whether there's no auto run again. I've broken into most of them so you can have a little look at the listings. Yeah, it's the same. So it's going to be go to 9000. I really need to write some new material on the music front, don't I? Okay, snake trapped within an orchard and mongoose close on its tail. I think I've played this in one of the videos before. So basically it populates the orchard with the apples and then you've got to collect them. Again, basically it's a snake game, so you're moving the snake around trying to consume apples. So you're finding where the most apples are, and a little bit, I suppose, like the Tron light cycle thing, you mustn't cross the... I've not really got to collect all the apples. Yeah, the score of -3 is because I'm actually shorter as a snake's chewing the end off me. So I'm actually shorter than I was when I started the game. Yeah, and there's apples appearing all the time. Go for the easy ones. You haven't got to change direction too often. Ah, you've got to remember up, down, left, right when you're playing with the cursor keys, haven't you? I wonder if I got a Kempston joystick scanning them. If not, it'd be easy, quick to add. You can't miss any apples or you'll just keep getting consumed. So it's a survival game, really, isn't it? So that was Mongoose. Anyway, see you in the next episode. Oof. Just before I go, I thought I'd share something else. That tape that I was running through, I did actually load the rest of them to get up to the poker dice ready for the next episode. Although I do have a copy of it, as I was just interested. And after the tape, this is obviously a reused cassette. It's it's these Boots CRX2 Chrome ones, which are the ones that were needed for the ECR81, which was the special tape deck I had for the ZX81. And I obviously overwrote. I've got a couple of these tapes with ZX81 stuff on. I'm still recovering. And I'd obviously used that for games collection for the Spectrum when I first had it and overwrote the tape. Because I've got the earpiece unplugged, and if I start playing now after the end of the games...
Convert decimal string to 2-byte binary number.
And in the background I can hear a lot of noise of people like talking, so I assume that was like people playing in the street or something. But in theory, the Next has got a way of loading. It has got a ZX81 emulation on it. For those who haven't used it, from the main menu you can go down to More, and you have ZX81 Basic, which is the fruitcake emulation from Paul Farrow, and you can use the tape loader. So in theory I should be able to, if I plug back in the connector for the tape deck, I should be able to load the program in that's coming after. Don't know whether it'll work. Never tried this before. So that means it crashed. Yeah, obviously. Oh well. But something to worth try a bit of recovery on ZX81 tapes for. So who knows, maybe there'll be another episode on the ZX81 as well. So this really is the end of the video now. Bye. I'm Tim Gilbert, and this is my channel on retro computing.